Oh my gosh, welcome to our next lecture, our kind of last lecture that's like scheduled. After this, you sort of know like everything for the purposes of being ready for your first tournament for the most part. We'll have lectures throughout the rest of the year, but those will mostly be like reactionary. Essentially what'll happen is you'll go to some tournament, you'll lose, and then you'll feel like, how do I not lose to that? So what's our final lecture on? I'm so glad that you asked, Amelia. It's on what's called topicality. Okay? So let's recap very briefly. Where do I stop? Where does this board stop being in frame? Like, am I good to right here?
This way.
I can right here? Okay, cool. So let's do just a brief little review of things we've learned at this point. So we have learned the structures of arguments, right? And the two main structures that we learned are that contention model, and we learned the uniqueness model. So real quick, what were the subpoints of the contention model? Like, what was the recipe for a contention? Title, correct. So we'll call it T.
Claim.
C. What supports a claim?
Warrant.
A warrant.
Implication.
Implication. And then if we were doing value debate, we'd also have the tieback, okay? What was the structure of the uniqueness model? I'll give you the first one for free, it's uniqueness. What's the second one? What's the second part of an advantage, Tristan?
Oh, sorry.
Not a trick question.
Link.
Yes, thank you, for the love of God. The
I didn't
link.
know you were looking.
What's the next one, brother?
Internal link.
Great, internal link, okay. And what's the last one? Impact, thank you. My gosh. That's how good you have to be to win a medal at the Nationals, okay? Community College Nationals. You have to be, someone asks you the most basic possible question, you go, and so don't worry about it. Okay, great. So we learned the structures. We also learned last week the refutation stuff. We learned about some of the structures for refutation. So let's stick with the first two. So we talked about the most basic refutation we can do was the Kasravi 3 part. Does anyone remember what the 3 parts of that were? Well, go ahead.
Accuracy, relevance, and significance.
Perfect. Accuracy, relevance, and significance. Sweet. And then we learned everyone's favorite terrible acronym, BUTTON. What was BUTTON?
No brink.
No brink. Keep going, someone, doesn't matter who.
Non-unique.
Non-unique, thank you so much.
Link turn.
Link turn.
Impact turn.
Sweet.
Outweighs.
Perfect.
Non-unique.
Outweighs and
No link.
no link. We already did non-unique. No link. Sweet. Great. So we learned all that. And then there's one more thing we learned. What's the last thing we learned that wasn't this? Counterplans. Okay, we learned there are counterplans, we'll just call them CPs. We learned that counterplans themselves have a counterplan text. They have an explanation of their competition. And then I explained this a little bit differently in the lecture we did because I was kind of skipping some steps. There's some things, and after the fact I realized that I wish I had done it differently, and I did it slightly different on Wednesday versus Tuesday. So the way I did it on Wednesday, which I would say is more correct, is that the third thing you would have here is what we call a perm preempt. Now we all learned what a perm was last week. The full term is a permutation. What's a permutation?
The plan includes either the counterplan or parts of it.
Okay, so close, yes. A permutation is an argument where we say we are testing the competitiveness. It's a test of competition for the counterplan. And we talked about how there's things that make it legitimate or not legitimate. We talked about these concepts of intrinsic and severance. What was severance? This is the harder question. This is the if you have this one, you get an A for the day. What was severance?
Severance is that the affirmative can't drop any parts of their.
The affirmative must maintain their plan for the entirety of the debate, which means their permutation must include the entirety of the plan. What is intrinsic? It's a toughie.
The affirmative can't add things
You-
that weren't in the plan or counter.
Yes, you can't add anything to your permutation that wasn't a part of the plan and the counterplan. Okay? Now, just real quick, I know we did a lot of this last week, but just for a second, when we're talking about the permutation, we talked about animals we were gonna get, right? And so I'll abbreviate, right? The plan is A, B, C. The counterplan is D and E. Can we read a permutation? Someone who's not a returning varsity national award-winning debater. Can we read a permutation? Look at your notes. You're allowed to. It's not. No. Also, you're not going to be wrong or in trouble for guessing and being wrong. So, do you think you can read a permutation? Tyler says yes. Tyler, why would this be a legitimate permutation, and what would that permutation look like?
Because, well, the counterpoint would be that you can do all A, B, C.
Great, yeah, so it would just be permutation A, B, C, D, E. Now, question, do you have to do that, or is there another option?
You can just do A, B, C.
D or A, B, C, E, your choice, right? Because you can sever parts of the counterplan as long as you maintain 100% of the app, which is A, B, C. Now, what would an intrinsic permutation look like? An intrinsic permutation, which is not allowed, that'd be cheating, would be something like A, B, C, D, X. Because X is not a part of the counterplan or of the plan. What would a severance permutation look like, which is also cheating and not legitimate? A, B, D, E. What did we sever?
C.
C. Great. I want to be very clear that that's not going to come up almost certainly at your first tournament. It will come up someday. But this is just building blocks so that you understand these are options. Why do I mention that? So this is how you read a counterplan, but now what's the answer to a counterplan? How do we answer a counterplan? Well, the first thing we almost always want to do is read a permutation. And as part of the permutation, we want to justify that it's legitimate. So we want to be able to explain why it's not intrinsic or severance. And then the last thing we have to do is explain its competition / why it's net. Or sorry, no, that's my mistake. We have to explain the net benefit to the permutation. And what we meant by that is we have to say why doing the permutation is better than doing just the counterplan. Why does including the AF, why is that a good thing? And similarly, when you're reading a counterplan, that perm preempt we mentioned, when you're preempting the perm, what you're doing is saying the opposite. You are saying any inclusion of the plan, whether just doing the plan or doing the plan and the counterplan, would be bad. That's a lot, okay? So that is the review of essentially everything we've covered in the last 2 weeks, okay? So now, go ahead and cut this one off, this video.